Hello and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Scint.
I'm Axion.
And, okay, Exdeath looks like a moon.
He's a big tree.
I know he is, just the way he's curved, he looks like a crescent moon, that's all I'm saying. Anyway, we are continuing through our discussion of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows while we, finish our playthrough of Final Fantasy V. Hopefully there's some epilogue, or we're gonna have to cut this off.
So, this is the end, both of Final Fantasy V and of Harry Potter. We are, at last, finishing up with the story of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows and the story of Harry Potter itself as a whole.
And to think this all started with Chuck E. Cheese.
It's been almost a year.
So yeah, we better get everything in that we wanted to finish talking about, because we're running out of game.
Yep. Neo-Exdeath, the final boss.
There is so much I have questions about with his sprite, but that's not important. Lead us off, Axion.
Alright, so... we have a lot to talk about with regards to the end of this series. But one thing I wanted to touch on is something that I mentioned in a prior episode, at the end of the last, near the end of the last episode actually, with regards to how Rowling treats certain characters. In particular, I wanted to talk about how the characters of Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks are written. With regards to... well, to be blunt, with how Rowling in the modern era writes things, and how she has become as a social figure.
So, like, I know part of what you're talking about in the sense that lycanthropy has been very unsubtly used as a metaphor for being LGBT, as how Lupin was essentially forced into quitting before parents started calling for his resignation because they wouldn't want someone like me teaching their children. So, I know that's been around for pretty much most of the series, but I'm not sure what you saw with Tonks.
So, Tonks, I didn't actually see it myself until it was explained to me by a few friends, and I read an article about it that I'll link in the description. As has probably been made pretty obvious from my bio, oh crap, that is not good. Let's fix you first. So, as has been made kind of obvious from my bio and stuff on our profile and all that fun stuff, I identify as non-binary. And a lot of non-binary people tend to associate their identification as such with non-traditional displays of gender nonconformity. Tonks kind of fits into this category in a lot of ways. Though she's never identified as such and is always referred to with she, her pronouns, a lot of that can be written off as just Rowling being Rowling. She has a very non-gendered presentation. She is kind of this very punk rock kind of look to her. All that kind of fun stuff. And... oh, wow.
Tree to the face. Ferris is sleepy, don't disturb her.
She has this description that is very non-gendered when she's first introduced. One down!
Yeah, Crilly this time.
Well, also one portion of Neo-Exdeath is dead.
So she presents as envy, and
yeah, and she spends a lot of this time in the earlier parts of the story where she's around as this kind of on the edges of civilization type character who doesn't play by all the same rules as a lot of society is associated with. She's got this very punk rock look. She's got this sort of if you saw her in the movies, that's probably one of the best examples. She was always dressed in like this leather, like punk outfit. She had wildly colored hair. She was this very standout character that did not fit into a lot of boxes. And sure, she was like a cop, but well, that's not good. But you see where I'm going with this, right?
More or less, yeah.
Come the final, it's less explicit in the books, and I will give Rowling the benefit of the doubt that she is not that she wasn't intending... She might not have originally intended this. It was not something that was originally built into the character's eventual... Oh, that's the wrong person. The character's eventual fate. But when she shows up in the movie, at the end of the final movie, she's completely changed her look, and she's this super stereotypical... brown-haired, regular old, housewife-looking young woman who is not the person that we've come to associate with Tonks. And throughout her existence previously, she was very adamant that, no, she's Tonks. She doesn't like her first name. She doesn't like her given identity. She has come to identify herself by her own means. And all of that goes out the window in the final story, where suddenly she's paired with Lupin, and now she's Dora. Nobody's calling her Tonks anymore, even though that was a big thing for her. She's Dora, this very feminized version of her name, which was already super feminine to begin with.
I think Dora's just short for it, because it's Nymphadora.
Yes, exactly, that's my point.
So I'm just saying, I don't think it's not more feminized than the name. I wouldn't call it super feminized, and her dad had been calling her that. So right. I had the impression that thing that her family called her, but yeah, I see where you're going with it.
But yeah, it completely takes this presentation that she was having as this very non-conforming character, and suddenly it's gone. I'm burning through these elixirs like crazy. But, yep. So you have this non-binary presenting character in the form of Tonks, paired with Lupin, who has the associations of that the werewolf thing has with LGBTness, and the Grand Cross again. And what it comes across about in the whole long term is that you have these two LGBT characters who just needed to come together into a good cis-het relationship to fix each other. Well, I guess Bart's is going to be useless for the rest of this fight, because I can't cure Berserk.
I'm not going to make the joke I was going to make.
Go ahead.
I don't think there's going to be any more Berserk anyway, so you don't have to cure it.
Oof. Hilarious, but oof.
You told me to... Go ahead. Yeah, I see where you're going. That wasn't something I picked up on, but now that you mentioned it, yeah, I can definitely see how you read it that way.
And I didn't I didn't originally read it that way, but in the light of what Rowling has said and done in recent years, and how much we've already seen and discussed about how things are with her prior writings compared to her personal opinions in the modern day and the things she's been more vocal about I'm not sure that this was unintentional. It may not have been explicitly intentional, let's put it that way, but I'm not sure this was not indicative of a lot of her opinions, and just a lot of the ways she's been voicing things in recent years does not lend to this being something out of the norm for her. And it just seems more and more like this is the kind of person she's been all along. And maybe it wasn't as explicit before, but now it's kind of impossible to ignore.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, that's pretty much the end of that, which brings us to the end of the story itself. That epilogue.
Oh boy, where do we begin?
I mean, I guess let's just start with the obvious. Why would you name your kids those things?
Yeah, like, hey, clearly Harry is playing favorites here. James Sirius is not too bad a name. Lily Luna's a little silly, but, you know, still not terrible. Albus Severus. Why do you hate your child? Like, not even touching on should these people have been namesakes for anything. Just, why would you name your child this? I mean, granted, it's probably a little bit better than Scorpius Malfoy over there, but, you know.
Oh, yeah. Or what was Lupin and Tonks' kid's name?
Teddy, I think Theodore.
Okay, that's not bad at all.
Yeah, that's a normal person name, much like, you know, James or Lily.
Yeah.
And at least Albus can be shortened to Al, which they do.
So, as we mentioned last episode, there is a lot that Snape and Dumbledore did that is just lines that were crossed that really probably shouldn't have been. The constant manipulation of people by Dumbledore, the constant abuse of people by Snape, the obsessiveness of Snape's personality and the harm he did to children solely on that. And just this chess master personality that Dumbledore was trying to evoke the entire time. These were not qualities that we feel should be lauded. And yet, this clear message of this story that we are being given, that we are supposed to take from the way this ends, is that Snape and Dumbledore were heroic characters who were more right than they were wrong, and they deserve to be celebrated.
And, like, on the one hand, you can kind of almost make the case for Dumbledore if you take the I'm going into the character's mind perspective. Because for everything Dumbledore did, he was still the closest thing Harry had to a father figure for much of his life. So, you can make the argument for that. Though I would also make the argument that you had a Hagrid and an Arthur Weasley, so Arthur Rubius Potter would have been a much more fitting name for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it even has an appropriately similar nickname. You just call him Artie.
I mean, they're just better people overall. Like,
Right.
No one's trying to puppet master anyone.
Exactly.
But yeah, we'll just ignore the fact that we have these two,
Yeah.
good people.
You want to talk surrogate father? Because we spent so much time talking about how Lupin and Sirius Black and Dumbledore were these surrogate father figures for Harry. Where's the love for Arthur Weasley? That guy was actually doing the work of fatherhood for Harry for so long. He was the one who was there for him. He took Harry into his home and treated him equivalently to one of his kids, if not in some ways better. Molly Weasley certainly treated Harry better than she treated Ron sometimes. But, like, the man's a punchline throughout the entire story. Even Molly, well-deserved might I add, gets her badass moment at the end where she is the one to take out Bellatrix Lestrange. And don't get me wrong, she absolutely deserves that. She definitely gets that opportunity and it deserves it. But other than generally being a good guy and being a hard worker at his job at the Ministry, and being an informant sometimes, Arthur Weasley doesn't get to do much that's heroic, and is often kind of treated as a joke.
I would argue that, I think it's a good thing that he doesn't have to do heroic things like that. He's doing enough heroic things by just being a member of the Order of the Phoenix and putting himself at risk.
Right.
But more importantly, he is a safe place for people to come to. But again,
and I absolutely do not want to discount that or say that he is any less of a person because he is not out there on the front lines being heroic.
No, I agree. It's Harry is not giving him the recognition he deserves.
And the story does not treat him with respect. And that's the point I'm trying to get to, is the story puts so much emphasis on these other characters, and in part it is because they go out there and do these super visible, heroic things, and Arthur doesn't. He's just doing the normal goodness of being a good man, a good worker, a good father, and the story doesn't respect that. And that's why I have a problem with how he's treated.
Oh yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Poor guy.
Here you's back!
Aw, dragon.
That's the dragon who died and turned into the Phoenix Summon. He's awesome.
Aw.
He saved our backsides a few times.
But yeah, and it's just it still feels like the entire world centers around Hogwarts at the end. Even though we've tried to, in the last couple of books, branch out more and see more of the world, everything comes back to Hogwarts. Everything is built around this one school.
Yep. On the other hand, that brings us to the other topic we wanted to discuss, which is...
Actually, I'm still going.
Oh, okay. We'll come back to this then.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Harry and Ron do become Aurors, according to Rowling. It's not actually mentioned in the book, but they do become Aurors, despite the fact that they have very much seen how politicized working for the Ministry can become, and have been on the victim end of that. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't go the route of having Harry become the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. But no, the only one that we see actually becoming a professor is Neville, who, granted, deserves it. He is very good at herbology, and I'm glad he's finally getting some respect. But it seems a little bit like a broken moral for Harry to have gone through these books, learning how easy it is for everything to become a tool of public opinion, up to and including in law enforcement, and still go for it. Or as I've seen a few Tumblrs point out, Harry Potter is a trust fund jock who grew up to be a cop.
Yep. And Hermione, and this is the one that gets me, Hermione eventually becomes Minister of Magic.
I mean, she's qualified enough.
Now, what we have seen of Hermione throughout these series is that she is the most socially motivated, she is the most skilled, she's the most adept And she is the one who is pushing the hardest for change. Apparently, in the time between her finishing this story and leaving Hogwarts, marrying Ron and having kids, and working her way up through the ministry to eventually become minister, she sets all of that aside. Because Hermione institutes no systemic change throughout her entire time in the ministry and as minister. Everything continues on as normal. There is no change to the relationship, the cultural relationship between wizards and other species. There's no change between the relationship between wizards and muggles. There is no change to the laws and regulations regarding house elves. Nothing. Apparently, as part of her rising through the political ranks, Hermione had to compromise everything that the books say. She devoted a lot of her social energy in the books to. And all of that went by the wayside as she worked her way up the social ladder. Now, the books never actually say this, because we don't see that part in the short little epilogue we get. But neither do we see the details about Ron and Harry becoming Aurors. All of this is post hoc information provided by Rowling, in the same way that she provided the Dumbledore is gay drop bomb.
Which is to say, sometimes there is something to be said for death of the author. Just let me enjoy the story. The only thing I need to enjoy the story is what is in the story. I don't need supplementary Word of God. This isn't like it's super complicated to figure out. I don't need to SparkNote Harry Potter to figure out the plot.
But yeah, if you take the Ron and Harry became Aurors thing as canon, then you would presumably also take the Hermione becomes minister thing as canon, because it's provided by the same source. And at which point, you're like, she succeeded at this goal, but what did it cost?
Everything, Thanos face. I mean, what's next? Luna finally realizes that the Quibbler is not accurate and stops publishing it, or turns it into a fact-checking organization? Like, it's that level of reversal. Yeah, this is not the first time a major resolution to something that has been built up was only resolved through massive character assassination, but I'm not here to talk about Endgame.
But speaking of Endgame, you think it's time?
Fantastic beasts and where to find them.
So this is what I was getting at a minute ago. Well, a couple minutes now.
I was really looking forward to this when we started seeing trailers for it, because it's like, cool, I still think the world is fun, and there's a lot of opportunities just to go all over the world and look for these magical creatures, and we can just see awkward Eddie Redmayne, Newt Scamander, doing awkward things, because he's fun as Newt Scamander, and this could be great. And you know how sometimes if you're watching, like, junior high track, you'll watch someone just run face first into a hurdle? Let's just say that's about how the books, about how these movies went.
So, I have only seen the first one. No, I did see the second one.
Which tells you something about how memorable they are, that you had to be reminded.
I actually remember the second one better than the first, because I saw the first, like, I borrowed a DVD from somebody while I saw the second one in theaters. I don't remember what was happening at the time when the first one came out, but I was occupied or otherwise busy where I couldn't go see it.
Yeah, I think we saw the second one together.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was visiting before we moved in.
Yep. And I remember And that's probably another reason it's memorable. But the first one, I was just not... And like we've discussed many times before, I didn't grow up on Harry Potter the way Scint did, so I did not have that drive to go seek out more of it when Fantastic Beasts came out. It was more of a, oh, that's interesting kind of thing. But and I remember seeing the first one and being like, okay, that happened, and going about my business. And then I saw the second one with you, and I remember us both walking out of the theater and going like, what did we just watch?
Yeah. So, short version. The Fantastic Beasts franchise basically undoes everything regarding the rules of magical secrecy for the sake of special effects. It hamstrings the potential of, let's go look at fun wizard shenanigans looking for these rare creatures, to a ham-fisted attempt to tell the story of Dumbledore and Grindelwald, but not actually talking about the relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. We're watching it all through Newt's eyes, which would be kind of like if we were going to hear the entire Harry Potter stories as told to us by Colin Creevey.
Ouch.
A peripheral character who kind of knows what's going on, but doesn't have anything to do with the actual important details. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, but still... ouch, especially given how poor Colin's story ends.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. But yeah, so there was a lot of potential for this. This could have been great, but then Rowling just decided to keep tacking on more and more, what is wrong with this, what is wrong with this. So,
also, if I could be a little bit pedantic here, the first movie had a couple interesting beasts, one of which, if I remember correctly, was kind of the focus of the story. But the second one, while still being called Fantastic Beasts, blah 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 blah, almost no beasts.
Or at least none that we're going to find.
Right. There was the handful that Newt kept in his briefcase, but...
That sounds far worse than it actually is. He keeps them in his TARDIS, okay?
Yeah, but his TARDIS is a briefcase instead of a phone booth. But anyway,
yeah, no, I get it. It's just
it feels like a ripoff.
I mean, it felt like a ripoff for different reasons than that, but...
Right, but, I mean, that's why I said, can I be pedantic?
Yes.
While we have this big, more important overarching problem, I also have this little problem and it bothers me and I want to talk about it.
Can we talk about the fact this Order 66 here, Lord Palpatine? You've misused an Oxford comma here. That's the level we're at right now.
But yeah, apparently they're still supposed to be going forward with the third movie, but there's no plans whatsoever for a date yet. They lost Johnny Depp for some reason, if I remember correctly. I will check.
Yeah, because of the Amber Heard trials, which a lot of people dropped him before his testimony could come out, which basically revealed, no, it's an Uno reverse card situation. She's been the actual aggressor and has been playing Woody Gazelle.
And I'll double check this in post to make sure that we're getting our memories of this right, and that is why they dropped it.
I think it was because that's when a lot of people got dropped, and it's just like, I don't follow celebrity news, so
right, but I don't want to spread misinformation either.
Oh no, I agree. I am saying right now, I could very well be wrong, but that's how I understand things resolved. I don't look into celebrity news unless I absolutely have to. But yeah, let's just put it this way: we have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Fantastic Beasts: The Secret of Dumbledore, and probably Fantastic Beasts and the Garbage of Fire. Because this is not going to get any better, because it keeps just like, it's a Jenga tower of plot holes that undo the world building if you think about it for even an iota of time. And then there's just more and more character problems as she tries to write her way around things that she herself has declared. Like, she wants that China money, so she can't have the Dumbledore and Grindelwald relationship be front and center, so she tiptoes around it as much as possible after she's the one who declared that no, it was an actual Wub relationship. So she has to retcon herself. Oh, and then there's everything to do with Nagini, who is apparently actually a human woman who has been turned into a snake and then relegated to a pet sometime after that happened. And good God, where do we begin with this? And it's just like, there's so much to get into. We basically need an entire video just to get into everything that makes me uncomfortable with the Fantastic Beasts franchise. But
and if it wasn't already past April Fool's Day, I might have suggested we just do this one long rant video for April Fool's thing, but it's going to be way too late by now.
Yeah, it's just like, if this is the direction that Harry Potter has decided to go in, even aside, like, bear with me for a second, putting aside all of the politics and implications, the writing is just bad, and it's Family Guy tier. Come at me, I don't care. Family Guy sucks, and you know it.
But we can't ignore the politics, because that's also a big factor of a lot of the situation. Is Rowling is losing some work, not as much as I think we'd like, but she is losing some work because she's become such a controversial figure because of her stances on things and how vocal and aggressive she is with stating them.
Yeah, but my point is, it's not just a case of politics. The writing has never improved in quality and has, in fact, now that she's gotten too big for editing...
I'm not arguing that.
That's my point. My point is, like, before people just swoop in with the, you're just doing this because you don't agree with her politics. Like, no, I don't agree with her concept of story structure and basic editing. The politics is another matter, which I also disagree with, but this is bad on its own.
Yep, even if this was somebody we agreed with on every account, that still doesn't make the writing good. It might make it more tolerable, but that's the difference between slogging through it and stopping every 5 pages to massage away a headache, and slogging through it and going, well, at least the message is good. You still end up dragging yourself through it, but it feels like slightly more or less of a chore because you do or don't agree with what happens to be being said. That still doesn't make it good, and it still doesn't make it
it's walking through magma, but it's not walking through poison magma.
Oh, foreshadowing.
Let people worry on that one for a bit. But yeah, I don't really know what else there is to say. Harry Potter was a pillar of my childhood and greatly formed a lot of my early reading preferences, but it has ultimately failed to live up to my rose-tinted nostalgia goggles and has actively curdled over time. And I can't deny anybody who still enjoys it. I can't deny that I was one of them once, but sometimes you can't go home. Hogwarts is no longer a place for me. And with that, I close the door there for the last time.
And as somebody who was only on the periphery of the fandom to begin with, and never really got super deep into it, I've seen what's waiting for me inside, and it's not something that I have any particular need or desire to delve into any further. So yeah, we will not be looking at any more Harry Potter. We will not be looking at Cursed Child. We will not be looking at the novelizations of the Fantastic Beasts movies, I'm sure those exist somewhere.
I could draw one on napkin and crayon and it'd be more coherent.
Another idea I had for April Fool's thing was going through one of those AI-generated scripts. I think it was called Harry Potter and the Portrait That Has Been Turned into Ash or something like that.
Harry Potter and Dorian Gray.
I've got it saved on my computer somewhere just because it was funny. But, like, we have no desire to delve further into this, and it's probably for the best, because that was perfectly timed. We have completed Final Fantasy V, one of my favorite games of all time. As we mentioned, yes, we beat up an angry tree. But
was it really a tree?
Yes, it was.
So it's not a pseudo-widow? And I've completely derailed you once again. That seems like a good note to end on.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and call it here. Everybody have a good time. Thank you for sticking with us through the entirety of this over a year-long series. My word. Oh, holy Haster. We started this at the beginning of 2022. And it's April of 2023. And I know we took a bit of a longer break for Christmas, rather than coming back to Harry Potter as quickly as we normally would have. But, I mean, that's still over a year spent on the same set of books and the same game. And, like I said, Final Fantasy V is one of my favorite games, and definitely it's high up there in the series, though not as high as 6 and 9 for me. But I am so ready to not be doing Harry Potter. We will see you all next time with
something completely different.
Yeah. A new book and a familiar series. See you then.